Happy Friday, everyone. We are live now for Intentional Conversations, VodCast and podcast. I am Dr. Nika White. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the founder and lead principal consultant of NWC. We're just going to give it a moment or two for our community members to get settled into this virtual learning space as we share time with each other during this hour. We do not take it lightly that many of you show up week after week. It lets us know that you think that the content is valuable. And we are grateful for that because that is always our intent. If you would please go to the chat, let us know where you're joining the conversation from. It's always a treat to us to be able to see the different geographies that are represented, not only in the States, but even outside of the USA. And so thank you for each of you that have accommodated your schedules to be here with us today. Also in the chat, while you're sharing where you're joining the conversation from, if you feel inclined to share your LinkedIn information, that lets us know that you desire to be connected with members of this community, even beyond this hour. And we're always grateful for that. My team will share my LinkedIn information into the chat, and certainly I look forward to connecting with as many of you as possible. Here at NWC, we really do value disability inclusion, so we do have closed caption that has been enabled for those who may benefit from it. And we also have some members that could be joining us on LinkedIn Live. And so if that's how you're catching today's show, then welcome. We do believe that the experience is optimized if you're part of the Zoom community. So if you desire to hop over to Zoom, we're going to place that information into the comment section, and we look forward to seeing you over this way. But if not, and you want to stay put, that is totally fine. Many people find it a great experience to be able to get the content from LinkedIn Live. And so we're just grateful anyway in capacity in which you're joining us today. If something resonates with you throughout our hour of time together today, I want you to use the chat as a way to get more proximate to each other in this virtual learning experience. Share your thoughts, your affirmations, your questions, your resources that you think may be of value and benefit to those who have joined with us here today. If you're part of the Zoom community, then cameras are encouraged, but certainly not required. We're just glad to have you in whatever capacity that feels best for you to engage with us today. So once again, if you're just joining, this is Intentional Conversations VodCast, where we intersect conversations of diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging with leadership in business. I hope you enjoy the show. All right, so as the screen says, let the conversations begin indeed, and that is exactly what we're going to do for this full hour of Intentional Conversations VodCast. And I'm going to jump right in because today is a celebration of many different types, but I'll share the first one with you right now at this juncture. NWC is celebrating its 7th year anniversary, and I could not be more proud of the journey that we've been on and the support that we have received from so many clients and others who are champions and advocates for this work of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Don't let anyone tell you different, but diversity, equity, and inclusion is alive and well. It is valued, it is needed, and we will continue to fight the good fight of that message. We will not let the noise of the opposite of that message to drown us out. And I think that's such an important reminder for all of us to amplify today. So happy 7 years, yay, 7 to NWC. This is also a special week to celebrate because it is the 1-year anniversary of my book baby, book number 3, Inclusion Uncomplicated, a transformative guide to simplify DEI, which was published by Forbes Books. And I am so excited to now have a year under my belt of having this book out into the public. And I have appreciated all of your Amazon reviews, your purchases, whether it's been on the audiobook or the hard copy. I'm just grateful for all of you who have seen this as a great resource, and you continue to show up for me by letting me know that the book has been a good resource for you. And I'm so grateful for that. So yay, one. I also want to let you know that at NWC, we really value being a resource to our broader community. It's our way of showing up and allowing people to be able to deepen their understanding, their knowledge, and their learning as they're on this journey of just building up, greater level of intellect around how in which we should show up to this space. And so we have put together a thought paper of DEI trends that are on the horizon for this year, which is based in a lot of research. It's available on our website at nikawhite.com. VodCast.com. And so we're going to place that link directly into the chat. And we hope that you will take advantage of it and see this as a great resource to just begin thinking a little bit differently about what is on the horizon for DEI and how we should govern ourselves in light of that information. We also have updated a lot of our marketing assets for 2024. So I invite you to check it out. We've refreshed our website, whether it's nikawhite.com or Nika White Speaks, and we invite you to check out all of those assets. We are so grateful to be in partnership with Procurement, who handles all of our marketing communications. They have been rocking it with me for years now, and I mean years, y'all. And so I'm so grateful, because one of the things we often hear about our marketing communications is how polished it is. And so I don't take for granted that we have resources that support us with those efforts. LinkedIn Learning. Okay, so we have 2 new courses that are coming out in Q1 of 2024, precisely late this month, early March. And I'm so excited for you all to be a part of that. The topics will be on the intersection between AI and DEI, really important hot topic right now. And then the second course that's going to be released is Organizational Accountability to Equity and Inclusion. So far, with the initial course that launched in June of 2023, we're over 17,000 learners and counting. And so I hope that this community will continue to show up by encouraging those in your network who you think would find value in these new courses to check them out. Thank you in advance. Now, I want to give you just a little bit of what you have to look forward to in some upcoming weeks this month, as we'll be welcoming every Friday, the 11 to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time hour, a different co-host each week. And on February the 9th, we will welcome Tammy Darmel Moore. And Tammy is the founder of an organization called Footprints in Africa. And so she's going to be talking to us about the vision of Footprints in Africa, how to get involved, and why it's important for us to have that organization on our radar. I'm also excited because following that Friday on the 16th, we have another amazing guest co-host that's going to be joining. Her name is Amira Barger. And in that Intentional Conversations, we are going to be discussing why DEI should not sit in HR, lots of thoughts and discussions that have been had on that, and how Black people can perpetuate white supremacy in corporate or predominantly white institutional spaces. So that should also be a very riveting conversation and timely for us as we really take the opportunity to investigate, how are we showing up? How are we thinking? What's the mindfulness that we are displaying around how we're trying to drive towards greater parity and equity? And then finally, we're going to be closing out the month on February 23rd with Dr. Julia Weiner. And in that conversation, we're going to be discussing performance expectations, navigating feedback on workplace presence, how Black individuals can harness their experiences and resilience as a source of strength and the responsibility to uplift. And so I look forward to each of those conversations and hope that you are marking your calendars accordingly and that you will plan to be here. But if not, no worries, because you always know there are multiple ways to get our VodCast content, one of which is we take the audio and we extract it and make it available in a podcast capacity for those who like to get your content that way. And then you always can catch the replay. So no excuses, right? So many ways to get this content. Now, it does me great pleasure at this time to turn our attention to our guest co-host for this week. And if you've been joining us, you know that we often like to make sure that we give an official introduction by reading our guest co-host bio. It's our way of letting you have insight into their background, their credentials, their expertise, their lived experiences, because we think that's important and it helps us to know how they're showing up to the conversation. So today will be no different. And I am so delighted to welcome a friend, someone who I admire greatly, and I'm going to read her bio at this time. And this is the bio of none other than Mareisha Reese. As President and Chief Operating Officer of the Winters Group, Incorporated, Mareisha N. Reese has helped spur the rapid growth of the global diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice consulting firm, which celebrates its, catch this, 40th anniversary this year. I don't know if y'all are like, maybe just kind of celebrating on your own, but I am. I'm going to stop there. 40th anniversary this year. The Winters Group, they are the OGs, y'all. I have to just say that. So mad respect, mad respect. Through overseeing enhancements to the firm's technology infrastructure, web presence, social media platforms, client service offerings, and workflow processes, Reese paved the way for the company to triple in size and attract Fortune 500 clients. Prior to joining the Winters Group, Mareisha worked as an engineer. Her experiences of often being the only Black woman in her workspaces and the biases of microaggressions that came along with that led to her passion for DEIJ work. A co-author of 2023's Racial Justice at Work, Practical Solutions for Systemic Change, and the forthcoming second edition of We Can't Talk About That at Work. Mareisha is a featured speaker and an advocate for change. She is the face of the next generation of DEIJ thought leaders and has been a force for advancing organizational transformation and actualizing equitable and just workplaces. Mareisha has received several recognitions, including Who's Who in Black Charlotte, Charlotte Business Journal's Power 100, and profiles in Diversity Journal's Women Worth Watching, all in 2023. Mareisha was also named to Diversity MBA's Top 100 Under 50 Executive and Emerging Leaders in 2021 and Diversity Women Media's Power 100 list in 2021. So you know what to do if you've been here week after week. We find those emojis, we find those words of affirmation and appreciation to extend a great level of gratitude to our guest co-host today for taking the time to share with us and be here with us. And I am so excited to share this space of time with you, Mareisha. Thank you for saying yes to our invitation. I could not be more thrilled to be at this place where we really can just spend some time unpacking a lot of all the things that you have been influencing at the Winters Group and beyond. And so thank you for being here. I want to give you a chance to lead us in by greeting this audience in your own way. And one of the things we like to do here is to encourage our guest co-host to share with us something that we would not know from, of course, your bio, which we just heard, or even going to your LinkedIn profile. And so we are really curious to learn more about you. Thanks for being here, friend.
Thank you, Dr. Nika, for having me. Thank you for that warm welcome. I truly appreciate it. And so, you talked about a little bit before you did my bio about lived experiences, right? And so a lot of times at the Winters Group, when we introduce ourselves, we do talk about those intersecting identities to help people understand, right, what we're bringing to the conversation. Mm-hmm. So I'll just share a little more. Some may be visible to you, but I'll still state it just in case not. So I am a Black woman. I'm a daughter. I'm a wife. I'm a sister and a dog mom. And the dog just appeared at my door, like on cue. I am a business owner. I'm an introvert, and so Nika getting me here was definitely out of my comfort zone. I am a Zennial, so for those of you that haven't heard that term, I was born on the cusp of Gen X and Millennial. I think I lean more Gen X, but you be the judge. I don't know. I grew up in the Northeast United States, currently live in the Southeast. I'm a graduate of the best HBCU, Spelman College. You didn't know that's the best. We are number one. I mean, it's true. I also, Nika mentioned, in my bio about engineers. So I do have degrees in computer science and electrical engineering, but obviously do not work in that space anymore. And so my passion work is definitely supporting organizations and creating spaces where everyone can be their best authentic self. So thank you again, Dr. Nika, and congratulations to you on 7 years and 1 year with the book and your new LinkedIn courses as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And so, yeah, I'm so glad that you mentioned that you're a Spelmanite because, recently in the news, we saw where Spelman received its largest gift ever. And I think it was in 100 million. Am I recalling that correctly? I mean, so what an amazing gift. And I love that it's finding its way into the media so that people can know, because I think a lot of times people are reluctant about, giving substantial gifts to HBCUs because we know there's a lot of, stigma out there around, are they really quality educational institutions? And, are we kind of throwing our money away? And so let me just say $100 million speaks volumes. And so if you question whether or not the school is worthy, then $100 million worth should let you rethink the value of the institution if you don't think that it's worthy already. So I love that. And so we are going to jump right in and talk about your background and your experience. But I can't help but to first lean into what has been so beautiful for me to watch. And I've shared this with you both and Mary Frances Winters. And that is the fact that the two of you, not only are you working together, but the way in which you all have planned and executed the succession. And I just think that's beautiful. I love when people are keeping it in the family. I think that's just absolutely amazing. And so I just want to lean into that for a second and get you to respond to what has that felt like? I know that I saw where I think this week you celebrated 12 years with the Winters Group. And so what was that like, having those conversations and getting to that point to where, okay, now it's time for you to like be elevated, and just would love to hear you share a bit more about that with us.
Yeah, so yes, just yesterday was 12 years with the Winters Group, and Dr. Nika didn't say it, but for those that don't know, Mary Frances Winters is my mother. So it is definitely a family business. And you know, like I shared, my background is in computer science, electrical engineering. So it never was that like a goal. It never was something that I always knew I would be here. But there was a time, so before this, I kind of what led to the transition to the Winters Group was maybe a forced transition to the Winters Group was that, I got laid off. And so I was working at a large defense contractor in Maryland, and it was a time where the economy wasn't doing well, things weren't well. And so there was a large layoff. And so I was one of the layoffs. And back then, that was the most devastating day of my life.
Mm.
I will tell you, I remember it vividly in my mind. I remember after that driving directly to Mary Frances' house and crying and all that. But now looking back and reflecting, it was probably one of the best days, right? Because I
Mhm.
would not be where I was. And so I took that time to really reflect, like, do I want to go back into engineering, and be in this, but I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy where I was,
Yeah.
but it's kind of, I have these degrees, right? So that's what I'm supposed to do. And so it really, I didn't right after that come to the Winters Group. I had another job in between, but there was a time in, Mary Frances, I think deep down inside her dream was, yes, come work here. But she didn't want to push that on, right,
Of
her
course.
kids. I have a brother as well. And so, want us to find our own way and our own path, and didn't want it to feel pushed upon. And so it kind of was just, we were talking one time because where I was just before the Winters Group, I wasn't, it wasn't good there either. I enjoyed what I was doing. It's just the work environment wasn't good. And so we talked and it was just like, yeah, let's do it. And so it's really been a very rewarding experience. I know some people may, think, well, what's it like working with your mother, family? You sometimes you hear, right, the family business, like, how do you, like, you can't do that. But we've had a really excellent, and I know you too, Nika, have
Yes.
your family involved in your business. And I think it's definitely rewarding. It's not the easiest thing, but it's
Mhm.
like, wouldn't change it for the world. And I always say, because I've 12 years is the longest I've been anywhere. Probably the hardest I've worked anywhere as well. And so I'm just really blessed. I learned a lot from her. As well, when you talk about the success, like, I'm like, no, Mary Frances can never retire. She's gonna be here forever. But it's just, I am able to just learn a lot from her, and really blessed to have the opportunity to be, almost running running the company. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's beautiful to watch, and from the outside looking in, and again, I read your bio where I talked about all the many different ways you have influenced the rapid growth and so many, opportunities of upward trajectory for the Winters Group. And so you're doing a great job. And again, it's just beautiful to watch. And yes, some of you in this community may or may not be aware that my daughter started working with me when she graduated from London School of Economics with her master's degree. And there are some dynamics that you have to navigate, and you have to be very intentional about having those conversations to ensure that both individuals are showing up in a way that can best serve the family business as well as each individual. And so it has been a journey, and but I am appreciating the ride. And again, you and Mary Frances are like an inspiration card. So I
Thank you.
love it. Okay, so you talked about how you were in engineering, and certainly I referenced in your bio how often being the only Black woman in the workspace was something that you had to navigate and deal with. And so it also, I would imagine, shaped your approach though to DEIJ consulting work. And so can you lead into that by sharing what are some of those specific ways that your experience as being, the only Black woman in certain workspaces has impacted the way in which you show up to this work today?
Yeah, I think it's, one way it's really helped me to empathize, right? Because I've had the experience, so I know what it's like, being the one of only in spaces, right? Have, the microaggressions, being labeled in different ways. And so, um, and, to be honest, Nika, like if you've ever heard Mary Francis's story, she had the same story 40 years ago, and which is why she started the business,
Yeah,
right? And so, the fact that it's still right in 2024,
yeah.
we're still trying to do that. But I think it helps me to be able to empathize. It gives me more drive to like want to
Mm,
continue, right? So I think you mentioned at the start, DEI is alive and well, right? We're hearing a lot of the negative, the naysayers around this work, it's not needed, and all of that. And it definitely, I mean, it is. So it gives me more push because I'm hearing the stories, I'm listening to people, the organizations that we work with. We do a lot of cultural audits
mhm.
sometimes. And so we're doing focus groups and listening sessions, and you're just hearing these stories. We just did one this week, and it was just like, it breaks your heart that it's
Mhm.
still to this day, people,
Yeah,
Black women, Black people, or other underrepresented groups are just not experiencing a full place. So I think, that really has helped me to know, like, one, to not give up. Cause I just, I think
right.
that, a lot of times we can find ourselves wanting to give up, as well. And so I wanted to share this story too about when I worked at the large defense contractor. One of my performance reviews, it said something about Mareisha doesn't toot her own horn. Now I'm not one, I like growing up, I was shy, like, so not only introvert, but shy, right? And so I've coming out of that, but I'm also not one that's just like out there, like rah rah, look what I did. And I wanted to share that because I think that it ties to the work we do when we talk about inclusive leadership and leaders being more culturally competent, or leaders knowing their individual employee
Mhm.
versus just right putting it all like everyone one size fits all, everybody. Well, this is my lens. Everyone should be around here tooting their own horn. Mareisha doesn't do that, so therefore she gets a lower rate,
Mm,
but it's
mhm.
just not my thing. And Nika, that was the first time I heard this, right? So it's not like she had been telling me, "Oh, Mareisha, toot your own horn, toot
Yeah,
your own." It was, so now it's on this permanent record. But I think that happens, just a lot, when you think about leaders leading people that don't look like them, that aren't from the same
yeah,
culture, right? They don't understand, it could be a cultural thing, it may not be a cultural thing, but that importance of why leaders need to be more culturally competent, why leaders need to
right.
understand people more from an individual basis. And I think, sometimes I don't know for sure if this was what I was doing either, but like I said, I was one of the only in the space. And so I might have been minimizing, right? I'm minimizing who like I am to just want to fit in. I already stand out because I'm
Yeah.
the only Black woman in there. And so, and we find that a lot too with our work too, right? People of non-dominant group, tend to minimize and all of that.
Yeah.
And so the more that leaders can even understand that and recognize that is very important. And so that was just a story and it sticks with you, right? Because that was more than 12 years ago. That was like 15, whatever years ago. But I remember it because I'm just always like
Okay.
that, just, and for leaders, I think like, what messages are you sending your employees or that, because you lack the skill or the competency to be able to lead across, differences.
Mhm. No, I'm so glad you shared that story, and I'm sure it's probably, resonating with many people. I want to go back to something that I don't want to be missed. You said that
Mhm.
one of the reasons that Mary Frances actually started, the Winters group was because her experience more than 40 years ago was the same, right? And that we are still seeing so many stories and incidents of women, particularly Black women, that are navigating these same type of complexities. And you know, it, it gave me pause because I'm like, you're right. I mean, we're in this what seems like vicious cycle of just, history repeating itself, repeating
Mhm.
itself. But what I also think is important to amplify is that we can't lose hope. We can't lose focus. We can't let that become a distraction that causes us to um, dilute and our message. I think we have to stay to course, and I appreciate the fact that we have these spaces to really just help encourage people around that, because even
Yeah,
for us that are practitioners in this space, we need to hear that every so often, right? Because we're on the
exactly.
front lines doing it. The other
Mhm.
thing that you shared about your story that resonated with me is the fact that sometimes we assume that people automatically know how to gain influence and gain visibility, and even
Mm.
the importance of that within the workspace. And that is a fallacy. Not everybody knows that. And so for managers or mentors and coaches that are making that an expectation but not helping those individuals, which oftentimes are people that are part of underserved, underrepresented, underestimated populations, to know what that looks like, then I think they're falling down on the job too. It's not just about telling someone to do something, but how are you walking shoulder to shoulder with them, showing them the way, modeling that? So how
Mhm.
unfair is it that here you are showing up to a performance management conversation, and this is the first time that you're seeing that you don't toot your own horn? Because really what they're saying is you need to gain more visibility. You need to gain a bit more influence. You need to be doing something different than what you're doing
Exactly.
right now.
Mhm.
And so I
Yeah.
just wanted to bring that to the conversation. So you're in your 40th year at the Winters Group, and that is a big, big, big accomplishment. I want to have you share with our community, how do you see the firm's role and impact evolving over the next decade? You've accomplished so much, but there's still a lot more to do. And what are you all prioritizing in terms of going into the future?
Yeah, so thank you for that. Congratulations. And I want to note that it's 40 continuous years because, and I feel like it's important to emphasize that
Mhm.
because it's Black owned business and you, Dr. Nika,
Yes.
can attest to this. It's not easy. There's many roadblocks.
No.
And so despite, there were times, I know I keep saying stuff about Mary Frances, and she may not want me to tell you this, but she shares this sometimes, that there was a time where there was like $13.47 in the bank
Yes.
account. And she remembers
Yeah.
that number, it's kind of
Oh,
like, okay, what
yes.
still
No,
so continuous business. So very
you're
grateful
right.
and
I have to
happy.
just interject here quickly. I remember when the three of us were having lunch. You're so right. She told that story, and that number was like embedded, and she used the
Mhm.
precise amount. So, yes.
Yes, and I think she uses that too. And for anyone on here who may be a business owner, like, don't give up, don't give up.
Right.
She is such a proponent of entrepreneurship and starting your own business and all of that. But yeah, so 40 continuous years. And throughout those years, and with diversity, equity, inclusion work, there's cycles. Like,
Oh, yeah.
right, I feel like we're in a down cycle now. It's not as trendy, right? It's not as it was 2 years ago, quote unquote trendy, as
Yeah.
it was 2 years ago. And so we're constantly having to shift with that. And as you said, and just as the field evolves in general, right? We continue to add all the letters to the DEIABJ and all of that. And so even for us at the Winters Group, a few years ago, we looked at that intersection of social justice. Like, how do we bring the social justice piece into this work? And so as we look forward, like, so we're constantly looking at the trends, looking at how things shift, but like to your point, not letting the external noise
Hmm.
sway us, right? We're gonna continue
Yep.
this fight. Whatever we need to call it, we're going to continue the fight
Just do
in
the
that
work.
way. And I say that too because we were talking with a school district, even there, they don't want to use the word, equity. Like, it's like these words, you can't even use the words, right? And so it's like, how do you get the message across with all these blocks? And so one of the things, ultimately it's really around organizational change, right? Change
Yeah.
management. And sometimes we have to navigate with clients, like changing, we know inside what we're really talking about, but we may have to change that language. But ultimately, no matter how things shift, we're going to stay true to our core, true to our
Um,
values. Um, and just know that there's, a need. And one of the ways we even shifted recently, some of our clients, so when the Israel and Hamas war started and different things, and so employees were dealing with that. And so I think sometimes, well, I don't know if they feel this way anymore, but you can't keep what's going on outside of the
No,
work,
you can't.
right? And so, clients reached out to us like, can you help? Can you help? So we just started trying to do some guided meditation sessions and breathing sessions, right? Just to help people just cope. We didn't teach anything about, right, the conflict or anything. It wasn't about that. It's just like people are bringing all of this to work, and companies are expecting them to just continue to produce,
Right.
and work. But they have to have an outlet, they have to way to cope. And so that's even one way that we've had to shift. And I I know I'm looking forward to your LinkedIn learning on AI and DEI, because I'm not convinced about AI yet. But where are the opportunities there, right? Like, so we have to follow where the trends are going, and so that might be a place too that we're looking at. But some of this AI I see, Nika, I'm like, I don't know if we want that. But
Yes.
to how that AI fits into the
Yeah.
need.
Right. Yeah. No, it's interesting that you bring up AI because, my message has been so far, and it continues to be that AI is powerful and it's not going away. And I think that there's a lot of benefit to having it available to all of us. However, there's also a lot of risk and danger if we don't continue to educate around responsible, ethical use and how it can create harm that maybe some people just don't consider and think about. And so you're right. And I think that it behooves us as practitioners to really be forward thinking as to how can we get ahead of that, right? So that we are helping to kind of create more of the benefit of its use being amplified than some of the negative stories that I know have already started to pop up and appear. So that is really important. So I want to talk about racial justice at work. You, of course, just shared as you were talking about the evolution of maybe the next decade for the Winters Group, how you all have really made a firm decision to intersect justice work into your messaging and your approach to DEI. And it's also coming up on its first anniversary, or maybe the anniversary has already come. Is it already 1 year old?
Not yet. Valentine's
Not
Day
yet?
will be 1 year.
Almost.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I remember when it was released, and I have my copy, and I've read the book. And so the book's impact has been, from outside looking in, pretty tremendous. And it has influenced a lot of organizational change. What I'm curious for you to share with us is, what can people get from this book that maybe they can't find anywhere else? Because there's a lot of books right now on just this broad
Mm,
topic. But what can people
right.
get from this book that maybe they can't find other places?
Yeah, so our hope with this book was really that it would be like a how-to guide, right? So
Mm,
it's divided into kind of two parts. One being just defining justice. For some people, so the word scares some people, so we're trying to write define the word. And when we talk about justice at the Winners Group, we're really talking about correcting past harms, changing systems. It's very
yep.
action based, redistributing power. So that's the first part. And then the second part is really about actualizing this, right? And so we wanted to write something where people can have takeaway, real life situations or examples and takeaways where they can readily apply to the organization. And we break it down into various aspects of the organization. So I know when you talked about Amira going to talk in a couple of weeks about
Mhm.
this shouldn't sit in HR. So we go
Right.
outside of HR, right? We do talk a little bit about hiring, but it's like in procurement, what do procurement leaders
Right.
need to marketing, right? The data,
Mhm.
technology we just talked about, right? AI,
Mhm.
learning and development. We also talk about psychological safety and allyship and
Mhm.
professionalism. What does that mean? What is the misconception around professionalism? And so it's in each chapter was written by someone from the Winters Group. And so I think that's really powerful too, because
Yeah, it is.
I applaud Mary Frances for that as well, for allowing us to be, some of us
Yes.
never authors ever, and now we could say we're an author. But it's really, really designed to take a look at every aspect of the organization and how can you actualize justice within that. And like I said, with examples. And one of our clients, Mount Sinai, they actually just started doing a book discussion on it. So they're going to take each
Nice.
chapter and do, a discussion. So it's good for that as well. You may pick out different chapters like, oh, I really,
Hmm.
especially if you're a marketing team, let's focus on this marketing chapter and like see, take a look at what we're doing internally and see how we might be able to change things. So
Yeah, that was something that was very impressionable for me in reading the book, because I too often talk about how sometimes we try to just relegate this work to HR only. And of course, human capital is one of the greatest assets, but it's so much broader than that. It definitely
mhm.
impacts all areas of operation. So I think that the book does a good job of bringing that full circle. And I also think that it sends this important message of, we talk often about DEI, but why are we doing DEI? The ultimate reason of doing the work of DEI
Mhm.
is for justice. And if we don't center justice as our outcome, which again, it's all about, redistributing power, as you said, and correcting the harms and things of that nature, then why are we even doing this in the first place? And so the name of the book again is Racial Justice at Work. And so my team will actually drop into the chat a link for you all to be able to source that book for yourselves. If you already don't have your copy, it is a great one. I highly, highly, highly encourage it. And I do also love the fact that Mary Frances saw fit to extend the opportunity to other members of the organization to be authors, co-authors by writing different chapters. I thought that was so cool. And so hats off to Mary Frances for that amazing idea. So I want to talk about the other book that is about to be released, and I'm so excited about this one as well because I don't have this book, but I had my assistant to actually order this book for me when it's coming out. So I'm just patiently waiting on my copy. But it's the second edition of We Can't Talk About That at Work.
Yeah.
And so, what new insights or updates can readers look forward to in this edition? And maybe in answering that, also give us kind of the impetus for why you wanted to write this book.
Yeah, so the release date is next week, February 6th. So yeah, February is just a lovely month for both of us, right? So
Yes.
February, everything's happening. But yeah, so next week, and so this is the second edition, and I am blessed to have be able to be a co-author on this second edition. So the first edition came out, oh, I should maybe 26. I don't know. Don't quote me. Don't quote me. But the first edition came out that Mary Frances was the solo author on that, and so I was blessed to join her as a co-author. And so this book, so just regarding what's new in the book, updated statistics, updated
Yeah.
examples. We have a new chapter where we talk about we have a couple of case studies with organizations that actualize having these conversations, both
Yep.
we call them bold inclusive conversations at work. But and there's an updated glossary, and we also added a discussion guide. We did not have any discussion
Nice.
questions or anything in the first edition. So this time each chapter has questions that you could talk through with your
Love it.
employees, whomever. But I feel like so this book in general, so it's we can't talk about that at work, but the subtitle of the book is How to Talk About Race, Religion, Politics, and Other Polarizing Topics. And I think it's just timeless, right? Like when it first came out,
Very.
it was needed, right? When we know it's needed now. All three of those, race, religion, politics, just right, it's in conversation
Right.
now. Like what we talked about before, people don't leave that outside of the workplace. It used to be a taboo,
Mm-mm.
we don't talk about politics at work, we don't. But yes, we not like we do because you can't just shut that out. I'm in work, I gotta shut everything off, right? And so it's really to help, folks talk through and have productive conversations around these polarizing topics. And like I said, this year, like it's just very timely, right? We're about to get
Very
into a very
timely.
election. We have a lot going on across the world. And it's just needed. It's very, very much needed. So I do hope that folks will go ahead and get that and will find it useful. I know that with the first edition, many people did find that it was very helpful for them to navigate how to talk about some of these issues.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's like you said before, if there are organizational leaders or companies that are trying to keep those conversations outside of the workplace because they perceive that that doesn't have a place here, then what they're failing to realize is that those issues, all those social issues are directly impacting the way in which employees are showing up to the workplace. And so you can't run from it. You have to almost provide a space where people can process together and can learn and understand together and acknowledge it, so that they don't feel like we are just totally unaware of how in which it's really impacting us. And so I love that.
Yeah, and I think too, Nika, that like it's some organizations that, well, why they don't talk about it, they're scared, right? They don't want to say the wrong thing. We've
don't
seen
know
a
how.
lot of, like, where they made a statement about this, and then the other groups are like, well, what about us? We've had some clients mention that too, and so it's hard. Like, this stuff, it's hard, it's difficult. We get it wrong, sometimes, but it's like, but you can't just not say anything, right? Silence
Right.
is not the answer, and
It's not
so.
the answer.
And
Yeah.
like you said, because you have your employees there that are from different groups. So when something's happening on the outside and you're not acknowledging that, right? You're not saying anything, but I'm coming to work and like I see another Black man got shot, and I'm coming, but you're not even acknowledging, and so I know some of
Right.
it too is fear. Like, I don't want to say the wrong thing. So
Right.
hopefully the book helps to guide that, but we have, because your employees, they're dealing with it, and you have to, as leaders, you definitely have to be able to, that one of those skills you have to have is to be able to have those difficult conversations.
No, absolutely. Someone in our audience today, Pavan, has said that we must give grace to get it wrong and work through it
Exactly.
together.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I truly
Because
believe that.
the Winters group gets it wrong. 40 years, we still, we have
Yeah,
to
we all
and make a
do. We all
problem.
do.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I think if we're kind of sitting back on the sidelines because we're like, I want to be able to dot all my I's and cross all my T's and be perfect at this, then yeah, that is very misguided thinking, because there's never going to be such a place, right? And nor should that be our
Right.
goal, because we want to
Yeah.
be able to position ourselves to continuously learn and grow and
Yes,
get better. And so
exactly.
there's a question about if the book is going to be available in audio or
I
Google Books.
believe it will be Audible. I know the other books that we've had with this publisher. I'm not sure about Google Books, however.
Okay. Okay, so
I
I'm
can
going to ask
get
my
that
team to
response.
also.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to ask my team to place the link for the new edition that's coming out next week, if we can't talk about that at work, so that this community can be preparing. If you already don't have your order in, to get that book, I definitely think it's going to be a tremendous resource. And so I want to shift right now and just let our audience know that we will be taking questions and comments from each of you if you desire to be a part of our show today. If you're a part of the Zoom community, you can let us know that you are willing to join the discussion by using the raise hand feature. And in that regard, I will call on you, add you to the spotlight, and you can present your question or comments directly. If you're here just in an auditory capacity but you have some curiosities percolating, you can place those into the chat. We'll take as many questions as time allows. Or if you're joining us by LinkedIn Live, you can share your questions in the comments, and my team is bringing that over here so that we can address those as well. So maybe while you're percolating on what curiosities are coming up, I'm going to go to the next question, and then I'll check in to see who is going to maybe join the conversation. I want to talk now about Racial Justice at Work Summit, which, if you have not been paying attention, the Winters Group is putting on this great summit, and they have been releasing over the past, several weeks, different speakers. And I am super excited because it is going to be amazing. And I just want to give you space and time, Mareisha, to talk about what this is about, what do people have to look forward to, who are some of the headliners, and how to get involved.
Yeah, thank you. So Racial Justice at Work Summit. So we did our first one last year, and it coincided with the release of the book. We did not plan to do a summit to release, but it came that way. So after the success of that, we decided to do it again. And so the theme this year is Justice for All. It's a 3-day event in April, so the 23rd through the 25th. And so on day one, we're going to take a look back. We're going to explore that idea of Sankofa. So that's the belief that we must remember and learn from the past. So with that, we'll have some keynotes by Dr. Janetta Cole and Jane Elliott. So Jane Elliott, some of you will probably know from the Blue Eye, Brown Eye experiment. And then the second day, we're going to be trying to focus on current issues impacting the DAI work in the present. And so we're going to have a keynote by Dr. Ibram X. Kendi and Minda Hartz, which I know Minda is a friend of yours as well. And then day 3, we're going to look ahead. And we're going to try to
Yeah.
reimagine a future that really centers equity and justice. And we have a few keynotes that day as well with Molly Burke, Rob Smith, and Dr. Ruha Benjamin. And Dr. Benjamin does a lot of work with the technology in this space as well. So
Yeah.
I'm looking at that. So in addition to these fabulous keynotes, we're also going to have some concurrent sessions and workshops. And Dr. Nika White is one of our speakers as well. So we're so happy to have her there. And then we wanted to kind of integrate some performance artists into the mix as well. So we have like an indigenous hoop dancer. We have some spoken word artists. So really trying to learn, but in an artistic way, right? Learn from other
Yeah.
cultures, artistic way. So we're very excited. Registration is open now. So like I said, so we're the past, present, future is kind of that theme for the 3 days.
I absolutely love everything about this concept, and I am counting down the days to not only just be able to present a session, but to be a student and to hear from all of the wonderful speakers that you have lined up for this event. And so we have placed that link into the chat. If you are just now hearing about this, run, don't walk, secure your spot, share it out with your networks. It really is going to be a great summit filled with really impactful information that I know is going to help us be on a path of creating some really impactful change that we really need to see. So I'm super excited about it. Okay, so we have our first hand raised, and I'm going to actually add Kwabena to the spotlight. Thank you so much for being here. Been missing you the past few weeks. I know that you usually are always here every Friday, but thank you for being here today. Share your question or comments.
Yeah, thank you again. Great to see you, Dr. Nika. Great to see you, meet you, Mareisha. This is, I mean, honestly, this is one of the, if not the best series on this in this space that I've seen. So it's always a place that I try to hold. I couldn't over the past couple of weeks for a couple of reasons, and one of those reasons is, well, let me take a step back. You said Spelman is the best HBCU. My wife is an alum of Alabama State University, and my wife and my daughter might disagree with you, but that's semantics. I
Yeah.
also do. I never went to HBCU, but I work with them. Actually, last week I worked with students from Central State and Fort Valley State, helping them to receive an opportunity similar to you, starting off there in STEM in the STEM field. And one of the partners I work with through the Harbor Institute is an IP law firm in DC, and we're trying to help them potentially move into a tech specialist role in this law firm upon graduation. They're all STEM students. So, um, with all that being said, I've done a lot of work. Actually, yesterday was my 1 year anniversary of my own business. I had a
Good.
somewhat similar story as you, and um, that terrible blessing of being a part of a layoff and that
Mm,
says, hey, now's the time, go.
right.
And I had a lot of support from people, and I didn't have to actually look for work because I had done so much work prior to this. So my question for you is, now that I've originally was thinking, hey, I'm going to do all the stuff in DEIB, looking at Dr. Nika White and so many other people doing all this amazing work, I'm like, I want to do that too. I've realized over the past year that I'm not great at all of those things, which we all know. What I'm really good at is a couple things. One is making people feel safe and secure in a space. So 90% of the feedback I get from the learning experiences that I facilitate is always you created a safe space. I do a
Mm,
2 day on psychological safety for leaders. So I'm really good at that. I'm great facilitator. And then I'm really good with relationship management when it comes to corporations and connecting them specifically with the HBCU students and that early talent part
mm.
of careers. I'm curious as to within the Winters Group and your experience in general, where does that fit within the larger? Where do you see that fitting in the larger scope of DEIB in the short and long term?
Yeah, so thank you for sharing all that. And I think, psychological safety, so that is like huge and very important. And that is something that we try to incorporate as well in our work. I think it's important for leaders. It's important for everybody, but definitely, right, you need the leaders to make that safe space for their employees. Some of what we kind of touched on without explicitly saying it today. And I think that there's a great need for that. And I love what you're doing with the HBCU. So it's, I kind of laugh a little because when we work with organizations that tell us we can't find people, we can't find talent, you can't find BIPOC talent. But it's like, but they're going to the same place, they're tapping into their networks, right? And then when you tell them, well, maybe go to HBCU, maybe switch, oh, what? Oh my goodness. Like, it's like, they, and so it still baffles me that people don't,
Right.
they don't see like that is like a possibility to, or think about that. And so I think that I think really, if you can create that space to tap into, other corporations and different things and really have that pipeline for HBCU students, I think would be really powerful. Dr. Nika, I don't know if you had any thoughts around this as well.
Yeah, I think exposure is so important. And so for those industries that quite honestly are heavily populated with non-melanated people or even people from other underserved backgrounds and demographics, what I find is that if they have not been exposed to it, it's not in their consideration set. So sometimes it is about those industries really working collectively to think about how can we play a role in helping to bridge that gap of lack of exposure. And so sometimes that may mean going into high schools, going into middle schools, and just kind of having people to talk about, here's some skill sets that apply to this particular industry. And then people have it into their mindsets. Because if we don't see it for ourselves, because we don't have anyone in our inner circle that has been, an engineer, that has been a doctor, that's been a lawyer, or whatever the case may be, then it's going to be hard for us to have that as something that we are aspiring for ourselves. And so sometimes people don't take advantage of those types of initiatives because they feel like that's too far down the road. I need a solution right now. But the only way we're going to be able to change the trajectory of that is if we are thinking about what are those initial steps we need to take to start appealing to those who may not even have certain industries on their radar. Congratulations on your 1 year. Best of luck to you. Thanks for your question today. Awesome. Okay, so I'm not seeing any other questions right now, but I do want to go to another topic because we touched on this briefly and we have a little bit of time left. And I think this is really important. You have referenced that Mary Frances is someone who's been in business continuously for 40 years, that, business ownership is something that she's a big advocate for and she talks about a lot. And so coupled with that, you all do a lot of work very specifically around racial justice in the procurement, supplier diversity kind of realm and space. And so I want you to talk a little bit about what are some of the most significant barriers that minority-owned businesses can face, and how do we remove them?
Yes, thank you. I'm actually glad we got to this, this question. So
Me too.
this was actually my chapter in the book. So my chapter in the book is Justice in Procurement.
Yeah.
And it really came from like my personal experience working. So a lot of what I have to do with the Winners Group is work with contracts, right? And finalize
Yeah.
contracts with procurements in other places. And let me tell you, it is not easy. And I know you probably have your stories too. And so some of the barriers, because we're a small firm. We have, I think right now we might have 15 full-time employees, and then we have other, 1099 contractors. But we're trying to play with the big dogs, right? The Fortune 500 with the thousands and thousands and thousands. So they
Right.
are set up with all these different teams, right? They have their legal team, they have their risk assessment team, and they have their procurement and all these things. And so, once we start to get into the contracting phase and different things, some of the barriers, some of the examples I put in the book is like payment terms, for example.
Yep.
Some of these companies have 90-day payment terms, 120-day payment terms. Now, for those that don't know, the payment term is like when you get paid, right? So if I submit the invoice, I'm not gonna get paid until 120 days later. As a small BIPOC owned firm or any underrepresented group owned firm, that could be hard. Like, especially Black, right? Black owned businesses, it's harder for us to get access to capital, right? And so I did this work, but you tell me I'm not getting paid for 120 days. So
Right.
that alone, right? And then like when we talk about with justice, so some of the questions we ask is like, who are we benefiting? who are we harming? Clearly, you're harming the buy
Right.
business, but the
Right.
company's benefiting, right? They're keeping their cash, they're, for whatever. And so that's one of the, and to me, that's an easy one. Like, switch your payment terms, right? And so a lot of times, so when I get contracts, there's like certain areas I know to go to, like, okay, what they say their payment terms are, let me try to renegotiate that.
Right.
And you all know organizations have supplier diversity programs.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not like while that's great, yes, okay, I'm seeking out these diverse owned businesses, but when you have them to do the work, you may be harming them. And that's the type of thing that we talk about. Another one is intellectual property rights. So a lot of times those contracts are written such that, we have perpetual exclusive use to use all this, right? Whatever the language
No,
is.
you don't.
You do not, right? This is my property.
Yes.
I created this, my content, but I can understand where those contracts come from, right? Because sometimes they're hiring people to, yes, build something specific for this, so it's mine now. But that's not, it's not one size fits all, right? So adjust your contracts, like have a contract specific to like the work that you and I may do, right? And then that are different. And then the third one, because this is the one that really grinds my gears, is the risk assessment questionnaires. Sometimes these things have like 300 questions. And so it's really about, they want to make sure you have systems in place that are safe, right? If you get hacked, if you get all this thing. But they're just like, there's so many questions that we sometimes I don't even know what that means. And it doesn't even apply to what we're doing most of the time.
Yeah.
But one time we've actually had to hire somebody to help us like complete it. So we're paying extra money. We don't even know if we're going to have the business yet, because sometimes they require these filled out before you get right contract. You don't even know if we have the business, but now we're paying someone extra to help us fill this out. And while they're filling out, there's like half of this stuff they're putting NA. But it's like, so even with that, right? It's like create a form for specific needs, right? I'm not even like half of that stuff, or more than half, doesn't even apply. So they're not one size fits all. And so yes, what can we do to remove them? Some of that onus is on the organization, right? They need to look at their policies, look at their practices, look at, right, and ask those questions like, who does this benefit? Who does this harm? How is it harming, the companies we're trying to do business with? And then on the flip side, us as, those that are business owners, right, like tell them, like let them know, because I do feel like at times they just don't know. They truly don't know. They're just operating. This is how we do it. This is what needs to be done. And they just truly don't know. And I remember at the summit last year when I presented on this in my book, one of our clients wrote me, it's like, I was watching the whole time and I was like, is Mareisha talking about us? I feel like we do this. And I was like, yeah. So I was definitely talking about many of the clients that we work with. Yeah. So I mean, it's really amazing when when you think about it, just how the lack of just them understanding what harm they could be causing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to recap those 3 points because yes, I see this as well. It is definitely something that is commonplace, but unrealistic payment terms, right? The IP expectations of who's going to be the owner of that, and then the risk assessment, just how arduous of a task that is. And I also think about sometimes there are requirements that are, again, they don't take into account really the advocacy of supplier diversity, like maybe unrealistic, commercial insurance amounts that they want you to have, or even like the RFP process. I no longer participate in RFP processes because of all the things that we've kind of talked about in this conversation. It just does not seem to make good business sense when most often they probably have already, determined who the vendor is going to be, but they're just kind of going through the motions. And then even the process itself, I feel like is not very, does not really lean into justice, because who has time to do all of that only for the potential slither chance of being able to get the contract? So there's a lot to unpack with just that topic in and of itself. And I can tell it hits a nerve with you, and it does with me too.
The insurance thing is another one. That's another place I go. And recently, a client, it was just such an outrageous thing. And it was such a small, like a contract, like what we're doing was so small, and they had this like outrageous requirement. So I wrote, I did my typical thing. And then they came back, they reduced it, but not to where our level was. And then I asked them, well, what's your reason why? Like, why do we need this? Then they came back and said, okay, we could reduce it, because they didn't have a why. Like, there's no reason.
Yes.
But
Yes. So ask those
keep
questions.
fighting.
Ask those
Yeah,
questions. Ask
yeah.
those questions. I think that's so important. Ask
Yeah.
those questions. This has been so good. I feel like we could go on and on and on. But if you've enjoyed this content and you found it valuable, then I definitely will encourage you all to sign up for the Racial Justice at Work Summit. Follow Mareisha, follow the Winters Group, get involved, get the books, and continue your learning journey. But I look forward to being a part of the summit, and I look forward to continuing to promote it to our communities. And I think that we all are going to find ourselves better for having had this summit made available to us. And so thank you so much for being here. I want to give you the final 60 seconds to close this out in whatever way that feels appropriate to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Nika. Thank you, everyone, for joining and staying on with us. I truly enjoyed this conversation and looking forward to many future conversations with all of you. Feel free to reach out to me. And yes, just a little note, we love all HBCUs, but there's only one number one.
She gets the final say today. Thank you all for joining us. We really do appreciate it. I hope you'll join us also next Friday. And y'all, it's Black History Month. And so, yes. Alrighty. Have a safe weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.